Very much.
Sir, for the record, could you state your name and spell your name?
My name is Alan Harrison, and that's A-L-L-E-N. Last name is spelled H-A-R-R-I-S-O-N.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm employed as a sergeant with the Gwinnett County Police Department Robbery Unit.
How long have you been with the police department?
14 years.
What background do you have at the police department?
So I did my first 9 years with the police department assigned to our patrol division, where I worked at 5 out of our 6 precincts. After 9 years in the Uniform Patrol Division, I was assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division. At that time, I started in our General Crimes Unit. The General Crimes Unit is what could be considered as a property crimes unit. That unit primarily investigates various types of thefts, other types of assaults. The main type of investigation that I completed when I was in the General Crimes Unit were entering autos, which is more commonly known as people that are breaking into cars. After that, I was assigned to the Robbery Unit, where I investigated armed robberies, carjackings, home invasions, and then after that, I was assigned to the Homicide Unit.
Let me talk to you about the time you spent with the Auto Theft and Property Crime Unit. Are you familiar with the term slider crime?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
So a slider crime can refer to a couple of different types of crimes. It's either a slider theft, entering auto type theft, where criminals will wait for somebody to, maybe in a shopping center, they will shop, they'll put packages, items that they purchased into their car, and then they'll go into another business, maybe to shop more, conduct other errands, personal errands, and they'll enter the vehicle at that time. And then also slider thefts of vehicles, which commonly occur at gas stations. And what we would see in those incidents is we would see where criminals would wait and look for an unsuspecting victim to pull up to a gas pump to put gas in their car or maybe put air in their tires. And what they were looking for was types of vehicles that had a push-to-start ignition. If you're familiar with vehicles that have push-to-start ignitions, you can start that vehicle if the key is within a certain distance of the vehicle. So in situations like that, when somebody is standing next to the vehicle, putting gas in the vehicle, maybe putting air in their tires, they know that they're able to slide into the driver's seat of that vehicle, hit the push-to-start ignition, and can potentially drive the vehicle away from that location.
I want to make sure I understand what you're talking about. So if I turn off my car, pulled up to a gas pump, turn off my car, put the key fob in my pocket, and go to the gas pump, it's possible for somebody to turn my car on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can they drive it away, even though they don't have the fob?
Yes, sir. So some of the technology has changed with that because of how prolific these types of crimes became. But when the technology was first introduced on some of these vehicles, as far back as 15, almost 20 years ago, some of the vehicles started getting the push-to-start ignitions. They didn't have those protections in the vehicles. People could often get into the vehicle, push the ignition, start button, drive away, would continue to be able to drive the vehicle. They just likely would not be able to restart the vehicle after that until they could somehow alter that ignition. And like I said, the technology has changed. A lot of the newer vehicles, you don't necessarily have the ability to do that as much, but again, that was directly the result of how prolific these slider crimes became.
Let's talk about your experience in the robbery unit. And let me ask you something. What county issued weapon did you have? Do you have a Glock, a Smith? What do you have?
A Glock 17.
Are you familiar with the term chambering around?
Yes, sir.
What does that term mean?
So chambering around is just a term that describes loading a round into the firearm. Once you, basically the way a firearm works with a semi-automatic firearm, you seat a magazine into the firearm. The magazine is what holds the ammunition, sometimes referred to as bullets or rounds, and then you rack the slide back, and that's what causes the firearm to chamber around into what's considered the chamber of the firearm in order for it to fire when you pull the trigger. If you don't have a round chambered when you pull the trigger, the gun's not going to fire. You have to chamber that round first.
So I can pop a magazine in, and if a round is not chambered and I pull the trigger, does anything happen?
No, sir. You'll just get a click.
Okay. So if I'm involved in a fight and I pull the trigger and a round is expelled from an automatic handgun, does that mean that a round has been chambered already?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you involved in the investigation of the murder that took place, or the homicide that took place on July 10th, 2022 at the QT gas station, Peachtree Corners, Gwinnett County?
Yes, sir, I was.
And did your investigation lead to the arrest of the 3 defendants on trial today?
Yes, sir.
For the record, could you identify the defendants going from left to right?
Yes, sir. Starting on my left, Miles Collins is going to be the defendant sitting next to his attorney, Mr. Clegg. He's wearing the light blue shirt with the bow tie and the COVID mask or the blue surgical mask. David Booker is going to be sitting next to his attorney, Mr. Lewis. He's wearing the navy Argyle patterned sweater with the collar. And Josiah Hewley is sitting next to his attorney, Mrs. Drake. He's wearing the gray crew neck sweater with the vertical light gray stripe and the blue surgical mask.
Your Honor, may the record reflect he's identified the defendants?
Yes.
Thank you. When you respond, well, let me ask you this. When did you first respond to the scene?
I was contacted shortly after the homicide. I was the on-call homicide investigator that afternoon. I don't know the exact time that I was contacted, but it would have been very shortly after the uniform officers, the patrol officers responded to the scene.
When you responded to the scene, did you see anything of significance?
Yes, sir.
What'd you see?
When I responded to the scene, I saw a deceased male that was later identified as Bradley Coleman. He was lying on the ground next to a Dodge Charger. The Dodge Charger was parked at the air pump off to the side of the QuikTrip. Both the driver's side door as well as the passenger side door were open. I observed that the victim, Mr. Coleman, did not have any shoes on. There were a pair of shoes that were kind of strewn about on the ground. Looked like he had lost those shoes somehow. It wasn't clear at that time how that had occurred. Like I said, the victim was deceased. He had a gunshot wound to the left side of his head. And then there was also an empty firearm holster that was lying next to the victim. And there was another thing of note was a blue surgical or COVID mask that I observed lying in a pool of blood directly next to the victim.
Did you have an opportunity to view any surveillance videos from the Q team?
Yes, sir, I did.
I'm going to show you what's previously been admitted as State's Exhibit number 3 and see if that's a portion of the video that you saw. Yes, Mayor.
It's right here on the, or he may have to get it down.
Thank you, Judge. Sir, yeah, there you go. Mr. Harrison, is that a portion of the video that you saw, sir?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, were there other things about that video that were significant to you as you were attempting to identify this automobile?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you a larger portion of that video. Uses a different media player, excuse me. While that's pulling up, let's go ahead and start some questioning on that. When you saw that larger portion of the video, what were some of the things that you identified as missing?
So when the vehicle, the Mercedes that you saw in that vehicle, the black Mercedes, when it first pulled into the gas station parking lot, prior to pulling up next to the victim's Dodge Charger at the air pumps, you'll see in the video where it pulls in, it first backs up to a gas pump, which again, based on my experience investigating slider type crimes is very consistent with that type of behavior. They'll often pull into a parking lot like that, whether it's a gas station or a shopping center, and they may set up somewhere in a parking space or at a gas pump so that they can make observations in the parking lot and look for a potential victim. Like in this situation where it was clear that there was an individual that was driving a Dodge Charger that is commonly known to have a push-to-start ignition. And then another significant thing that I observed on this vehicle relates to part of how I was able to identify this as the suspect vehicle. One thing I noticed when the vehicle started to back up to the gas pump was in the front windshield, I could see an object that appeared to be a white automatic toll reader. What I mean, for anybody that's either lived in a state or driven in a part of the state of Georgia, or maybe in the Peach Pass lane here, roads that have toll lanes, it's in Georgia, the Peach Pass lane, we have just the barcode that you put on your windshield, but other states often have an actual device that's an automatic toll reader, and that's so that they can just drive through the toll pass lane without having to stop and pay the toll. I was able to observe what appeared to be that white automatic toll reader on the windshield, which was kind of unique. We don't see that a lot of times here in this area because we don't have very many toll lanes unless it's the Peach Pass, which the Peach Pass doesn't use that type of device. And then the other thing that I observed was a black vanity plate on the front of the vehicle with a silver tag frame around it.
I'm going to direct your attention to State's Exhibit number 3, the larger portion of it. I think the time is 12:36:49. Is this the automobile that you're talking about in the top frame of the QT video?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, I'm going to forward it just a few seconds and ask you to point out to the jury what you've been discussing. Just can you point out what you've been talking about?
So if you look real closely, right here in this area, it's kind of hard to see, this small picture, but I've watched this video probably 1,000 times, and as I continued to watch it, I kept seeing that object that was there, and I couldn't tell what it was at first, and we were able to later determine that it was the white toll reader.
Thank you, Your Honor. With that information, were you able to identify a suspected vehicle?
Yes, sir.
How?
So one of the things that I did once I arrived on scene at the QuikTrip gas station after reviewing surveillance footage was I began reviewing flock data for the area. I don't know if flock has been explained at this point to the jury. Okay. So when I reviewed flock data, I was able to identify, well, let me back up just a little bit. I knew based on the information I had received at the QuikTrip that I was looking for a black Mercedes E350. I also knew that that vehicle had an out-of-state tag, and based on the video that I saw, the out-of-state tag had some blue coloring on it, and I believed that tag at that time to likely be an Illinois tag. That's just based on my experience, 14 years as a police officer. I see a lot of license plates. I can't always identify every one immediately when I see it by the state, but ones that we see frequently, we're usually pretty good at being able to tell what state that license plate is out of. So I believed at that time it was an Illinois tag, but I knew for sure that it was an out-of-state tag with blue on the license plate.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
So at that time, I started checking flock data for the area, looking specifically for any black Mercedes passenger cars with an out-of-state tag, and I was ultimately able to identify a black Mercedes E350 with an Illinois license plate, C as in Charlie, V as in Victor, 90487, as the suspect vehicle in this case.
During times relevant to this homicide, was there any other Mercedes S350 black with that license plate?
No, sir.
Any other Mercedes black 350 with an Illinois plate?
No, sir.
Any other black Mercedes 350 of any kind other than this vehicle?
No, sir.
Thank you. So what'd you do? Once you got that license plate, what'd you do?
So at that point, once I had that license plate, I started looking into additional flock data for that license plate. One of the things that we can do with flock, yes, we can specifically search an area like we did in this particular case, looking for black Mercedes with out-of-state license plates. But once I was able to identify that particular license plate, I can then look for any other flock hits or data to find out where that license plate has been hitting within the last 30 days. So once I started searching for additional flock data on that particular license plate of the suspect vehicle, I located additional flock hits on the day of the homicide, as well as the day before the homicide, that pretty much solidified this is going to be my suspect vehicle.
Okay. When you had that license plate, did you run the license plate?
Yes, sir.
Did you run it with a computer that was lawfully connected to the GCIC?
Yes, sir.
What kind of information did you receive?
When I ran the license plate, I saw that it was registered to a female by the name of Wanda Fielder in Riverdale, Illinois. At that time, I started doing some additional background research on Miss Fielder to find out, see what I could find out about this particular vehicle and who it was associated with. When I started doing background research on Miss Fielder, I saw that she had 3 adult children with Atlanta area addresses. At that time, began doing more research into them to see what kind of association I could find with them with this particular vehicle. I was ultimately able to identify one of her children. I say child, but he was an adult, is an adult. His name was Lazarick Fielder. Mr. Fielder had an Instagram profile that was titled Zarek Reynolds, and on that Instagram profile, he had numerous pictures posted of luxury type vehicles that he was advertising for short and long-term rental. And I also ultimately found a business that was associated with Mr. Fielder where he was listed as the owner, and the name of that business was Zarek Reynolds LLC.
Were you able to get phone extractions as it relates to this case?
Yes, sir.
And did you see phone extractions with the number identified with David Booker of 470-342-9346? That's 470-342-9346?
Yes, sir.
And were you able to extract those messages from the phone?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 102 and previously shown to Defense Counsel. You recognize State's 102?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is State's 102?
So this is a screenshot of a text message. This was actually provided to me by Lazarick Fielder.
Yes.
I was able to speak to Mr. Fielder after I determined that he owned and was associated with a rental company that rented out luxury vehicles. I believed at that time that the Mercedes E350 in question, the suspect vehicle from this case, I believed that it was probably going to be a vehicle that had been rented out to the suspects. So I contacted Mr. Fielder. I was able to speak with him. He did confirm that the...
I'm not going to object to anything Mr. Fielder said is hearsay.
Don't go into what he said, but were you able to get screenshots from Mr. Fielder
Yes, sir.
consistent with the cell phone extractions that you were able to get related to the cell phone of David Booker?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please continue.
So I was able to obtain screenshots from communication with Mr. Fielder's company, Zarek Reynolds, that were consistent with the cell phone extraction that I ultimately obtained for Mr. Booker. This particular exhibit is a screenshot of a driver's license for Miles Collins that was provided to Zarek Reynolds in order to rent the Mercedes that was used in this crime.
Judge, at this time, will tender State's 102.
I would object to any such document. Again, as being hearsay, he indicated that was obtained at a certain particular time. There's been no testimony whatsoever. That is hearsay, and as such, it is not probative or competent or admissible evidence, and so I would object to it.
Joining that, Judge.
I apologize, Your Honor.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, likewise, Your Honor.
You joined too. Okay. Mr. Hewley joins too. Mr. Melvin.
Your Honor, this is a screenshot that is consistent with the cell phone extractions as previously been testified to. It has the number of David Booker on it. The authenticity is pretty much without question, so we would tender State's 102.
The question posed was not, he went beyond, the question posed was elicited subsequent hearsay testimony from the witness which would not be admissible. And absent the hearsay evidence, I do not believe that the evidence which is sought to be admitted can be admitted. It's simply not relevant. They can't tie it up. They can't connect it to any vehicle in question.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the defense objection and
Thank you.
admit exhibit 102 over objection.
Your Honor, for the record, we did give notice under the business records of Mr. Fielder's text messages. Thank you. Permission to publish 102, Judge?
Yes.
Thank you. Is this an accurate representation of State's 102 that's previously been shown to Defense Counsel?
Yes, sir, it is.
And that's Miles Collins' driver's license?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you it's been previously marked as State's 103. States 1 and 2, does that indicate there's a conversation going on?
Yes, sir.
Does that conversation continue?
Yes, sir, it does.
Can you tell me what States 1 and 3 is?
This is an additional screenshot that I was able to recover. This is communication between Zarek Reynolds and the phone number associated with Mr. Booker, telling Mr. Booker that he's got to do paperwork on the car, and Mr. Booker, or the phone number associated with Mr. Booker, is indicating that he's got to go get him once he gets it, I believe referring to the car.
Judge, we tender States 103. Previously served as business records as well.
Judge, I'm gonna object. I'm gonna actually take this up outside the presence of the jury.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna ask y'all to step off. And Mr. Melvin, can I see the exhibits?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
We've got 103 through,
We're going to have 103 through 106 next, Judge. So-
okay. Just so I can have them while we're talking about them.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. 102, I have admitted over objection. All right, and 103, it appears that all the other exhibits are from the same cell phone. Is that correct, Mr. Melvin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, Mr. Lewis, I'll hear from you.
Judge, first I'm assuming that Mr. Feld is not coming, which is why we're trying to sort of backdoor this evidence in front of the jury. I haven't read any case that says business records cover text messages. Business records are supposed to be records that are kept in the ordinary course of business. The communication that you might have with a potential customer or the outlining of your policy, I don't think that that's covered under business records. I understand that there was some communication. What the prosecutor is asking now, in light of the fact that I don't think Mr. Feld is coming, is I'd like to have Mr. Felder testify via these text messages, and I'm going to couch it all under business records, and I don't think that that's correct.
And I would, and Your Honor, I apologize as opposed to business records, because the business records is the alliance records. I misspoke on that one. But it's still not going to be hearsay, Judge, because it's something that Detective Harrison literally saw that was provided to him as it relates to this case.
This is the witness that we arrested, correct?
That would be Zeus, Your Honor.
Okay, not,
Mr.
okay.
Mallett, right,
Okay.
yes.
Is Mr. Felder coming?
We're not going to call Mr. Felder. But also, Your Honor, however, under 801, this is a statement of Mr. Booker from his cell phone, so it's not hearsay.
It's, give me that again, I didn't hear you, Mr. Melvin. 801.
801,
Yeah.
this is a statement, this is actually a statement of a party of property. These are the statements of Mr. Booker on Mr. Booker's cell phone, and so it's not hearsay. And the cases are clear that the responses to Mr. Booker are provided for context. So if the court wants to, it can say the responses of Mr. Felder are not for the truth of the matter asserted, but the statements of Mr. Booker, absolutely not hearsay at all.
I need you just to keep up with what's happening, Judge. The prosecutor is asking the witness the context under which they have read the text messages, and then hiding behind a different law to say that it's admissible. It may be admissible, but not necessarily through this witness. He's asking this witness to give the jury a context, and then he's going to a different set section of the law to say it's admissible. It may be admissible, but not the way he's trying to admit it to this witness in light of the fact that he doesn't intend to present the other witness. That's the problem.
It's not a problem, despite Mr. Lawrence's embellishments of words like hiding. It's the law. It's a statement of the defendant. It's on his cell phone. It's confirmed by Mr. Felder's reply to Mr. Booker. I'm entitled to ask about the defendant's statements themselves.
Right, and if the officer says, I pulled messages off of Mr. Booker's phone, these are the messages that I pulled off of Mr. Booker's phone, we don't even need to get to Mr. Felder.
Right.
But he needs Mr. Felder, he needs to keep talking about Felder to give it context.
And there's nothing wrong. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with context, Judge. Race just out of the crime.
The problem is when you're asking the detective about a conversation that he had with Felder and the officer says, I confirmed. That's still hearsay. I confirmed. That's exactly what Mr. Clegg was talking about. I spoke to Mr. Felder and I confirmed. Whatever it is that you confirmed is hearsay in light of the fact that he's not coming in. The fact that you don't say he told me doesn't change it to non-hearsay.
Your Honor,
That's the problem.
and I apologize. Mr. Lewis is trying to get into the conversations with the Felder. I haven't entered the conversations with the Felder. I've entered actual screenshots of the defendant's statements to Mr. Felder. So as under 801D, it is a statement of the defendant, and it's not even an exception to the hearsay rule. It's not hearsay. That's 801D.
How do we know it's Mr. Felder, Judge? How do we know it's Mr. Felder? We've got Mr. Booker's number and Mr. Booker texting somebody. How do we know it's Mr. Felder? Mr. Felder told the detective. That's the problem.
And that would go to weight, not admissibility. But as far as statements of the defendant from the defendant's phone number, which has been confirmed by cell phone analysis, by entry into the record, by Mr. Wilbanks, by business records exceptions under T-Mobile, those are all confirming that it's Mr. Booker's phone and Mr. Booker's statements. And under 801D, statements of the defendant are not hearsay.
I understand statement of Mr. Booker, including text messages, are not hearsay.
Correct, Judge.
Okay. The problem is that we don't know that this is Mr. Felder.
Well, actually, the detective, and I apologize, Judge, but the detective has confirmed it's Mr. Felder. So the next question is he talking about what Mr. Felder said? No, he isn't. But he's bringing in evidence of Mr. Felder's screenshots from Mr. Booker, which also, on the cell phone extractions of Mr. Booker, his phone is confirmatory of he sent messages. So it's a screenshot of Mr. Felder, but he's not talking anything about what Mr. Felder said.
But I'm not letting these in without Mr. Felder's alleged comments back and responses redacted. They're not, this is Mr. Booker's phone.
Yes, ma'am.
470-342-9346. But if Mr. Felder's not going to be here,
Then Judge, what the law says is that you can charge the jury that Mr. Felder's statements are to give context, because I'm not offering them for the truth of the matter asserted. Those statements aren't even hearsay if I'm not offering for that. But they do become relevant because it's context to the statements of the defendant himself.
And if it was coming out of his phone, I don't think we would have any discussion. What I'm presenting is screenshots that we received from Mr. Booker's phone. Fantastic. But when we start to talk about Mr. Felder, what Mr. Felder received, and again, Judge, I want to make sure we're clear. We're talking about Mr. Booker's phone so that we can make this argument clear. The jury's going to have to determine if that's Mr. Booker's phone. But to the extent that we've identified that it's Mr. Booker's phone, I don't think I can object to the screenshots that they pulled off of his phone versus this conversation with Mr. Felder, who won't be here, who will say, this is what I received from, or who confirmed this is what I received, or who implied, or who suggested, which is all hearsay.
And Your Honor, Mr. Lewis is trying to define the battlefield as this is Mr. Foley. These are statements of the defendant.
I understand.
Thank you.
I think Georgia law, as I read it, lets it all in.
Just no more objection, Judge.
Yeah. Mr. Melvin?
All right. Thank you, Judge.
All right, we need the jury back.
Okay.
Is there any instruction the defense wants me to give about these responses?
No, Judge.
No, are there any instructions?
No.
No, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, okay, I thought it said no objection. Okay, thank you. All right, come on in.
May I resume, Your Honor?
Certainly.
Thank you. Detective, let's pick up with State's Exhibit 103. I've also put before you States 104, 105, and 106. Ask you to take a look at them if you haven't already and ask if you recognize them.
Just briefly, I think I objected, I think you have to overrule the objection and make the evidence.
Yes,
Just no objection for.
okay.
Yes, sir, I recognize them.
Okay, and States 102, 103, 104, 105, are those conversations between Mr. Booker? Are those conversations and screenshots of Mr. Booker's statements?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And as far as States 103, 104, and 105, are those true and accurate representation of those conversations consistent with the cell phone extractions that have previously been introduced into evidence?
Yes, sir.
All right, Judge, we tender States 103, 104, and 105 this time.
Those are admitted over objection.
Thank you. Judge, permission to publish to the jury?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Detective, that's States 102, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then does it continue on with States 103?
Yes, sir.
Now, on States 103, it continues on to States 104. Is there anything significant about States 104?
Yes, sir, there is.
What is that?
So in this particular message, there is communication about purchasing a rental insurance policy for the vehicle that was being rented.
And States 105 also, States 105, a continuation contain the policy number?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, we're going to tender States 112, which is the Alliance Insurance Policy identified that that policy number previously provided the business records exceptions.
I don't have any objection to that, Judge.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
State's Exhibit 112 is admitted without objection.
Who took out the rental insurance policy on this matter?
So according to the records that I received from Alliance Travel Insurance, the policy was purchased by David Booker.
Thank you. I'm going to direct your attention to States 106. Ms. Pledger has testified previously that she has provided payment for the Mercedes. What is States 106?
States 106 is a screenshot of an Apple Cash payment of $500, and this particular screenshot came from Ms. Pledger's phone, or the phone number associated with Ms. Pledger.
Once you identified the Mercedes, what did you do? Oh, Judge, I tender States 106.
No objection, Judge.
No objection.
Wait a minute, 106?
Yes, ma'am, I think I've already tendered States 102, 103, 104, and 105.
Okay,
And States 106 is the Apple payment.
all right. Any objection on 106?
No, Judge.
No.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
106 is admitted without objection.
Once you had the information about the Mercedes, what steps did you take?
So after that, I was able to track the Mercedes to a Texaco gas station that was located at 635 Lindbergh Drive in Atlanta.
Did you see anything significant when you find anything? How did you track it to the Texaco?
So ultimately, the Mercedes was able to be seen on a City of Atlanta DOT street camera in the parking lot of the Texaco gas station at that location. The vehicle was seen in the parking lot from 1:17 a.m. to 1:43 a.m. on July 9th, 2022. And that was the early morning hours, the day before the homicide of Bradley Coleman.
I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots. States 70. Were you able to, and the Texaco video has already been admitted into evidence, were you able to view that Texaco video?
Yes, sir. On July 12th, 2022, myself and Sergeant Jorstad went to that Texaco gas station, and I personally reviewed the surveillance footage, and I've also reviewed the surveillance footage I believe you're speaking of.
What did you see that was significant to your investigation?
So when I reviewed the surveillance footage, I was able to see a black Mercedes passenger car pull into the parking lot of the Texaco gas station, parked at a gas pump. Shortly after parking at the gas pump, I observed a male get out of the passenger side of the Mercedes. That male then walked into the gas station. When the male walked into the gas station, I immediately recognized the sweatshirt that that individual was wearing. It was a black sweatshirt with a large multicolored logo on it. Like I previously said, I had seen the QuikTrip footage probably 1,000 times at this point, watching it over and over, trying to figure out exactly what happened. And I recognized the large multicolored logo on that sweatshirt, and it appeared to be the same sweatshirt that one of the suspects was wearing in the QuikTrip surveillance footage, more specifically the suspect that got out of the front passenger seat of that Mercedes and ran up to the altercation that was taking place between the victim and the other suspect at that time.
Yes, sir. Which suspect?
David Booker.
Okay. Did you track Mr. Booker's movements within the Texaco?
Yes, sir.
What did he do when he was in the Texaco?
When Mr. Booker came into the Texaco,
Judge, I'm going to object. The officer just said it appeared to be. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. What it appeared to be versus the prosecutor telling the detective it is David Booker. That's for the jury to determine, Judge.
Judge, I'll rephrase the question. In your opinion, who was it?
in my opinion,
I'm going to object. The jury can see the video and make their own determination as to if it's the same shirt and who it may or may not be.
Your Honor, with the adoption of the new evidence code under 701, this line of questioning is entirely appropriate. The officer is able to express his opinion. Prior to the new evidence code, they couldn't, but now they can.
When did that new evidence code come out?
2013, and the cases are quite legion on this issue.
What are the cases, Judge? Prosecutor's talking very fast, and I don't mind the speed, but I don't know what he's saying is right. And then when called on it, the prosecutor backtracks, no, I didn't, well, I made a mistake as to this. He's talking very fast. If he could just give me the case that he's talking about, just one case, post-2013, after the law has changed that he's talking about, and then I can look it up. Just one case. Just one. State versus...
Your Honor, I'm going to cite defense counsel to 24/7/701. And as far as doing defense counsel's work for him, I'll be happy to do that, but I'm not gonna do it in front of the jury judge.
24/7/701 is a statute, that's not a case. The
It's
prosecutor.
Cates versus the state, Your Honor, may I proceed?
What's the case?
How do you spell Kate's?
I believe it's CATES, please.
That's all I have, Judge.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yeah, but I want you to be careful in this line of questioning.
Sure.
The jury can determine whether the sweatshirt is the same sweatshirt.
Of course.
That's
Yeah.
their province.
Thank you, Judge. Were you able to track that suspect's movements, Mr. Booker's movements through the Texaco?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to take screenshots of that Texaco video?
Yes, sir.
Did you see Mr. Booker do anything that's significant as it relates to this investigation?
Yes, sir, I did.
What did you see?
I saw Mr. Booker ultimately purchased a blue surgical mask, or commonly referred to as a COVID mask, which was also consistent with the mask that was recovered at the crime scene.
I'm going to show you this has been previously marked as Stacy's at 7D. Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
This is a screenshot of the Texaco, the interior of the Texaco surveillance footage. And like I said, this is a screenshot of Mr. Booker purchasing a blue surgical mask.
Your Honor, at this time, we would tender State's 70.
I don't have any objection to state 70, Judge. I only object to the witness saying who it is versus leaving that to the jury.
All right, I'm going to admit State's Exhibit 70 without objection.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, could you point out for the jury where the suspect is in the blue surgical mask?
Yeah, so this is going to be the suspect right here, and you can see right there, just on top of the counter, you'll see the blue surgical COVID mask.
Thank you.
Can the jury see the video? I mean, the photo? Yeah, okay.
Okay. You able to get any other screenshots from the Texaco security videos?
Yes, sir.
I want to show it's previously been marked as 70, and I apologize for this, but 70A
Apologize to Sheila.
and 70B. You recognize 70A and 70B.
Yes, sir, I do.
How do you recognize 70A and 70B?
So these are screenshots that I took of additional surveillance footage from the exterior of the Texaco gas station. The individual in this photo was seen getting out of the driver's seat of the Mercedes after it parked at the gas pump.
All right. Your Honor, permission to publish 70A? I'm sorry, we tender 70A at this point.
I'm going to object. I mean, we keep hearing that this individual was seen getting out of the driver's side of the Mercedes, but we have not seen any said video at this particular point. So all we've got at this juncture is here is a guy at a gas station. Now, I have not heard any evidence saying that the surveillance video indicates that it is the car in question, that the tag number of the car in question was seen at that particular Texaco gas station, and all we've got is a conclusory statement saying, yes, in fact, this person was seen getting out of the video. If the video shows it, let's see.
Permission to publish State 68, Your Honor, the Texaco video?
Yes, the Texaco video was admitted without objection through Sergeant Jorstadt. Am I correct, Mr. Melvin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All I'm asking is to receive the video.
Okay, certainly.
They
You're gonna,
say it's in evidence, I want to see what is on that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And Your Honor, this is pretty lengthy. With the court's permission, I'm going to fast forward it to the relevant times because we're talking about 30 minutes.
All right, I've already given the audio charge. Do you want it again?
No, Judge. Thank you.
Okay.
And pausing the video, detective at 1 minute, 54 seconds. Oh, I'm so sorry. Get back to that. Make a good record. All right. When I hit play, fast forward it to about 1 minute. Detective, did you see a car pull in on the far side of the nearest gas pumps?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. Is Is that going to be the car in question that we're talking about?
I'm gonna object, Judge.
Why is this car significant to you, sir?
This is going to be based on the information that I had received to track the Mercedes ultimately to this gas station. This is consistent with the black Mercedes that was seen on the Atlanta.
I'm going to object to that statement. That is hearsay, and based on information I have received, this is going to be the black Mercedes. That's hearsay. So if the tape shows that it is in fact the black Mercedes, that's all well and good. But I think the tape stands on its own. And for this officer to come in here and testify as to additional evidence which is not known to the jury somehow suggests that this is the car makes his testimony inadmissible. We've got the video. Look at the video. Can you see it?
Okay. Any response before I rule on that objection?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to sustain that objection. I want you to play the video through, Mr. Melvin,
Yes, ma'am.
without commentary from detective.
I'm going to pause the video, just ask a question of direction from the court. When you say play the video, Your Honor, do you want me to play the entire 30 minutes or may I fast forward?
No, I don't, defense has no problem.
You got it.
Relevant portion of the testimony.
Thank you.
Right.
I apologize.
Yes.
Stopping the video at 1:34:12. Direct your attention to stage 70A. Did you take a screenshot of what we're seeing up on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Is that a true and accurate representation of what we're seeing up on the screen?
Yes, sir, it is.
Tender stage 70A.
That's the video, I don't have any objection to the
No, this is the screenshot of what's on
I
the
don't have any objection to the screenshot.
No, I have no objection, Judge.
No objection, Your Honor.
State 70A photograph is admitted without objection.
Can you direct attention to State 70B? Could you describe State 70B?
This is an additional screenshot I took from that video. This is just a more zoomed out screenshot where you can see the Texaco gas pumps in the background.
Judge, we tender State 70B at this point?
No objection, Judge.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
State's Exhibit 70B is admitted without objection.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like permission to publish another video contained within States 68 because we have multiple cameras on there.
All right.
I'm going to publish the one that is ending in 5, is camera 25 ending in 500. Your Honor, for the record, I've played camera 25, last 4 digits are 1734, and I'm pausing it at 30, at the 30-second mark. Continue. Stop and detective, you note the time on the video?
Yes, sir. It's 1:19 a.m.
Did you actually have an opportunity to review the cell phone records and cell phone extractions as it relates to this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Is that time consistent with what you saw on the time advance data?
It's actually consistent with the cell site location information specifically that I received for the phone number associated with David Booker.